Hey guys, it's Clint from Night Shift. Let's talk about aliens. Eric Burlison, Republican congressman from Missouri, has a winning smile, a growth mindset, a positive mental attitude, and a thumbs up that the ladies love. And he believes that aliens may be extradimensional angels, at least according to an appearance that he made recently on That UFO podcast, which, by the way, if you don't already listen to, you should absolutely listen to it. That UFO podcast, that's the name, That UFO podcast, is the best podcast in this space by far. So kudos to the guys over there for pulling it together and doing a tremendous job. You should absolutely check it out. But he made some statements on the podcast that were written up in this article on futurism.com by Victor Tangerman. Who's Victor Tangerman? Let's click his name. Oh, Victor Tangerman has no photo. So we don't know anything about Victor Tangerman other than he's a Toronto-based staff writer and photo editor for futurism.com. A photo editor with no photo. Congressman Eric Burlison, Republican Missouri, has waded into the discourse about UFOs, and in an outburst that probably says more about the state of U.S. politics than unidentified objects in the sky, speculated that they might be angels sent by God himself. Yes, you read that right. During a recent episode of That UFO podcast this week, Burlison took the UFO conversation in a wild new direction. Well, it's not a wild new direction. This idea of extradimensional beings has been around for a very long time, and it's basically built on the notion that we don't have a complete picture of how reality works, and there may be a number of dimensions adjacent to ours coexisting in the same time and space, and that beings that live in those dimensions have developed the technological means to travel from their dimension into our dimension. And that when we look up in the sky and see UAPs or UFOs, orbs or whatever, what we're actually seeing is a either reflection or some kind of a projection from another dimension into our dimension, or an actual craft that somehow has the ability to punch a hole through dimensions and travel. Any Red Dwarf fans out there? Remember Dimension Jump? Remember that Ace Rimmer episode? They come from one dimension into our dimension. So this is not a new idea. It's not a wild new idea. It's just an idea. It's one of many possible explanations for what could be going on. But it's not the only one. It's not even the most likely one. But we'll get to that. Quote, "They may not fit exactly the biblical narrative, but whenever I use the term angels," he said, "to me, it's synonymous with an extra-dimensional being." That's fair. I mean, science and religion have long been trying to describe the same thing using completely different methodologies, totally different vocabularies, different languages. So it makes sense that one person's alien might be another person's angel. I see no reason that that's a problem. We're talking about a superior being, a being with superior technology at the very least, more advanced than us, that can demonstrate capabilities that would seem like magic to us. That doesn't mean it's magic. It just means that we don't understand how it works. Where they originate from almost doesn't really matter, to me anyway. But I have no problem with this. It's another way of getting at the issue, and as long as we're all trying to move in the same direction and understand more and know more, I think that's a positive thing. It gets a little weirder, though. We'll go on. I think it's more likely that it would be something extra-dimensional than it would be within this dimension, Burlison argued. And then, so what I'll say is that when you start talking about things in that nature, that they are extra-dimensional, well, in a lot of different scriptures, including the Bible and others, that's really the way that you describe messengers of God or, angels. I'm still okay with most of this, but I don't know where this idea comes from that it's more likely that they would be from another dimension than from this one. That's something that I've noticed a lot lately. People have been bringing up this idea that it's probably not aliens from another planet in our own dimension, but it's way more likely that they're from a different dimension. I don't understand. I haven't heard the argument made in a compelling way, to me at least, that why that would be the more likely scenario. Certainly, we're already in this dimension. We understand how this one works, and we know that our physics is incomplete. So there are probably a number of different ways of traveling from one place to another within our own dimension across vast distances. And our own science is looking out into the stars and finding planets around almost every star that we care to look at. And rumor has it that in 2024, this year, we're going to get some big news from the James Webb Space Telescope suggesting or possibly confirming that they've found biosignatures in the atmosphere of an exoplanet for the first time. So that's not proven. That hasn't been said yet, but there are a lot of rumors suggesting that this may be coming this year. So as we look out from Earth and we see all of these other planets around us, it certainly seems more likely to me that beings on those planets with better technology would be looking back at our planet, which is this tiny little speck, but blasting radio waves out into space. Our atmosphere is being completely altered all around us all the time. We've changed our entire atmosphere. They can certainly see that from where they are, just like we can see it from where we are. I don't understand where this line of thinking comes from, but I've noticed it a lot lately. It's just an interesting thing. Burlison isn't alone in musing about a connection between UFOs and religious texts. Quote, UFOs were in the Bible, Representative Tim Burchett, Republican Tennessee, claimed in 2021. Read Ezekiel. It talks about the wheel flying around. So, I mean, they've been around since we've been around, and somebody needs to come up with some answers. I love Tim Burchett. He is like Dr. McCoy on Star Trek. He is like, no bullshit. Let's quit fucking around. We need more of that energy in this discussion. We really need like 150 more Tim Burchetts. Burlison has long called for oversight over reports alleging the U.S. government has conspired to keep spicy UFO findings from leaking to the public. Here's that word, spicy. I really don't like the way this article paints this whole conversation in such a silly way. This is like old school media bullshit that they do where they belittle the subject and poke fun at us for even discussing it. And they do it in a really underhanded kind of like subtle way so that you don't pick up on it until you go back and you're like, wait a second. Is that what you just... Spicy. Okay. This is probably the biggest story of all time. Every journalist in the world should be foaming at the mouth to get their hands around this story. This is completely world-changing. This is a once-ever event. This is like the one time ever that this is going to happen. And the way they just kind of blow it off is kind of insulting. Last summer, the subject has been fraught with drama. Last summer, an Air Force veteran and former member of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency named David Grush came forward to allege that the government had secretly recovered alien spacecraft and even dead pilots inside them for decades as part of a top-secret UFO retrieval program. Needless to say, his allegations sounded incredibly far-fetched. Well, okay, far-fetched, fine, they do, and it's safe, and it's actually good policy for all of us to do a reality check, like once every 72 hours. This rabbit hole is super deep, and you can get lost in it. And sometimes you have to do a sanity check and just make sure that what you're looking at is based off of something reliable. So like what I do is I look at the fact that the sitting president gave the go-ahead to the Senate Majority Leader to draft a piece of legislation called the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act, which sailed through the Senate in a rare display of bipartisanship. That's real. That really happened. That's a reality check. So when I'm like lost and I don't really know like what I'm looking at anymore, and it's like, is there a galactic federation or is there whatever, interdimensional, extra-dimensional beings, little green men, all this, just stop. Remember that this is real. Presidents have seen this stuff. Scientists, engineers, astronauts. This is not something that's in your head. This is a real thing that's really happening. It goes on, why would aliens fly these incredibly advanced vessels to Earth only to crash them? And why would they pack themselves into the vessels in the first place, considering they would presumably have advanced enough technologies to pilot the ships autonomously, like NASA with a Mars rover? This is just lazy thinking, because we start with an assumption, which is we have a full, complete picture of what an advanced civilization is like and how they would behave. And then based on that faulty assumption, we build an argument around that. Like, why would they crash? How could that be possible? We don't know what we don't know, and we barely know what we do know. But we clearly don't know a lot. So yeah, there's probably a number of things that could cause an advanced craft to crash. I'm sure an uncontacted tribe in the Amazon looks up at the sky, sees airplanes flying over, and thinks that they're piloted by the gods if they're not gods themselves. But airplanes crash all the time. We don't go into the Amazon and explain to the uncontacted natives why a stealth bomber would crash or why a satellite might come down out of the sky. So they're not going to explain it to us. That's one possibility. There's a lot of reasons why craft could come down. It's just lazy thinking to assume that they would never come down and therefore none of this is real. The article goes on, despite those glaring questions, Grush's testimony clearly rattled Burlison and his fellow members of a House Oversight Subcommittee created to investigate matters related to reports of what the government now calls unidentified aerial phenomena. In November, Burlison advocated to renew the security clearance of Grush in an apparent effort to get behind this alleged cover-up. Apart from invoking the Bible, Burlison has also previously voiced skepticism over claims that UFO sightings amounted to proof that we were visited by extraterrestrial beings. This is interesting. Quote, what they observed is what they observed, and the footage that they have is what it is, he told lawmakers during an August congressional hearing following several briefings of retired military members, including Grush, giving testimony. I just don't jump to the same conclusions that they do, which is that these things that we're seeing in the sky are coming from little green men, light years and light years away. You don't jump to that conclusion, but extra-dimensional angels is totally a possibility. Like, how can you make that jump? That's really strange to me. And it goes back to this idea that it's unlikely that they're aliens from another planet, but more likely that they're from someplace else, another dimension. I just don't understand that. In my opinion, I think it's either angels or it's man-made, he added. I think the most likely explanation is that it's man-made. Even among UFO truther circles, his comments were met with ridicule. There's that word truther, poking fun at people who believe in this, talk about this, and discuss it openly, and trying to make you feel just kind of dumb about the whole thing. We don't know anything about Victor Tangerman other than he's a Toronto-based staff writer and photo editor for Futurism.com. A photo editor with no photo. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out. And if you really like this channel and you want to support what I do, consider becoming a member because it offsets the cost of doing this. And there are costs involved, I'm afraid. So it does help. Thank you so much for even considering it. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of Team Night Shift. You guys are the reason I come here every day and I do this. And you give me the strength to carry on. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep looking up.